Hey guys, welcome back. My name is Parky and we'll be going over Phyrexia All Will Be One, looking at the multicolored cards in the set, and we'll be ranking them by mana value. So we'll be looking at what cards are going to be the best to fill out each spot in your mana curve, and for you to be looking for in your limited formats, because I'll be focusing on that today. So sealed and draft, this is for you. Feel free to check me out on Twitch on Monday nights at 9:30 as I'll be streaming some Arena at that time. And feel free to drop a like and subscribe on the video. I'm welcome to hearing some of your feedback on what you think of these rankings, because I haven't seen these cards being played and I haven't played with them myself, so there's a lot of room to move around. And let's jump right into the 2-drops, because there aren't any 1-drops in the multicolor. So we've got Slaughter Singer, a Forest and a Plains, 2/2 creature with Toxic 2. So Toxic is going to be when they deal combat damage, they get the number of poison counters that's after the Toxic listed on the card. And then whenever another creature you control with Toxic attacks, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn. So you're going to find that these cards are going to be a lot stronger than the mono-colored cards, because these are going to be the ones that lay out the archetypes for the set. So it's going to be a very small margin between what is going to be really strong and what's going to be not so strong, but this is just obviously what I feel is the case. This card is going to be a great 2-drop with Toxic 2. You know, maybe you've got a Toxic creature already out on the battlefield on turn 1, and this right off the bat allows it to become a 2/2 or whatever. So I think this card has a place. Next is Voidwing Hybrid, Island in a Swamp, 2/1 creature with flying and Toxic 1, and then every time you proliferate, if this is in the graveyard, you get to return it to your hand. So I know there aren't too many creatures with flying and reach in the set, and the fact that this allows you to put through toxic damage early in the game and throughout the game, depending on when you proliferate, there's tons of proliferate in the set, especially in blue, black, and blue-green. I think this card has a spot there. Next is Malira, the Living Cure. Forest and a Plains, 3/3 legendary creature. If you would get 1 or more poison counters, instead you get 1 counter, and you can't get an additional poison counter that turn. Then it also has Exile, choose another target creature or artifact. When it's put into the graveyard this turn, return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. So I really like this card. I like the fact that it slows down the poison counters, because they can pick up, I'm assuming, pretty quickly in this set. And then on top of that, you also have this ability to bring back some stronger creature. You can't really pass up the fact that it's a 3/3 for 2. So I think this card has great value to it. It's just these next 2 cards seem to have a little bit more. At Venser Corpse Puppet, an Island in a Swamp, 1/3 legendary creature with lifelink and Toxic 1. Whenever you proliferate, you get to choose one. If you don't control a 3/3 Phyrexian Golem artifact creature token, you get to put one on the battlefield. And also you have target artifact creature you control gains flying and lifelink until end of turn. So this card has no downside. For 2 mana, this is going to be awesome. It's going to be able to protect your health. It's going to allow you to get attack through. This card is going to be fantastic to pick up as a pick one, pack one, and build around. After is Jor Caden, First Gold Warden. You got a Mountain and a Plains for 2/2 legendary creature with trample. When it attacks, it gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. Then if its power is 4 or greater, draw a card. And this has a lot to go with it. You can just have an equipment on the battlefield pump itself, and then it has that 4 power. You can have other creatures with the equipments on top of it. And so this card is very flexible. I find that this will probably be a great 2-drop to have down. And so you can hope to start drawing cards on turn 3 or 4 if you have the right combinations down. So I really enjoy this card. I think these 2 cards are pretty much tied. On to our 3-drops, we have Malkator, Purity Overseer, 1 a Plains and an Island, 1/1 legendary creature. When it ETBs, you create a 3/3 Phyrexian Golem artifact creature token. At the beginning of your end step, if 3 or more artifacts entered the battlefield under your control this turn, create another 3/3. So this card has high upside. It's just the likelihood of you putting down 3 or more artifacts in multiple turns, even just another turn, you would have to have pretty good synergies going on. It's going to be hard to build. I like the fact that you get a 3/3 and a 1/1 for 3. So that part is good, but there's a very low ceiling for this card. Next is Char Forger. Pay 1, a swamp and a mountain, 2/3 creature. ETBs create a 1/1 Phyrexian goblin creature token. Whenever another creature or artifact you control is put into the graveyard from battlefield, put an oil counter on it. Remove 3 oil counters from it, and you get to exile the top card of your library. You get to play that card this turn. So it's not bad. It provides you a sack outlet, and it also gets you some value for losing creatures off the board when you do sacrifice them, and then allows you to draw more. So I think it's a good, staple card for that archetype, but it's nothing special. Next is Bladehold Warwhip. Pay 1, a mountain and a plains, artifact equipment for Mirrodin. So you get to play this and you get a 2/2 rebel creature token on the battlefield, and you get to attach the equipment to it immediately. And then equip abilities you activate of other equipment cost 1 less to activate. And then the equipped creature for this one has double strike, and then equip 5. So the equip cost is quite expensive, the double strike is fantastic, and you essentially get a 2/2 double strike for 3, which is a good base cost, and then it makes the rest of your equipment easier to equip. I think this is a very, very good card. You're going to want this when you're playing those equipment style decks. Next is Miglow's Maze Crusher. Pay 1, a mountain and a forest, 4/4 legendary creature. It comes into the battlefield with 5 oil counters on it. You get to pay 1 and remove an oil counter. It gains Vigilance and Menace. Pay 2 and you get +2/+2, and then if you pay 3, you get to destroy artifact or enchantment. That's a lot in one card, especially for a 3-mana 4/4 with that many oil counters on it to start. This card is going to be a bomb for that color, and it's going to do a lot of damage. Next is a little bit of a questionable one. We've got Tyvar Jubilant Brawler. Pay 1, a swamp and a forest for 3 loyalty planeswalker, and then you may activate abilities of creatures you control as though those creatures have haste. And you get +1 untap up to 1 target creature, and then -2 mill 3 cards. Then you may return a creature card with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. I think this card is going to have good synergies with certain cards, but I think it's going to be very narrow. If you can build the deck around this early on, I think this card could be amazing, but it's just very, very narrow. I just wanted to give it the benefit of the doubt before cards are played, but this card could drop down. Next is Tainted Observer. Pay 1, a forest and an island for a 2/3 creature with flying and toxic 1. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you can pay 2, and if you do, proliferate. This card is amazing. The fact that this card synergizes with other cheap creatures and you can just proliferate and add on tons of counters on everything. The fact that this is a flyer with good toughness, I think this creature is fantastic, and I think that people are going to undervalue this at first for how well it's going to do. After that, we have Glissa Sunslayer. Pay 1, a swamp and a forest for a 3/3 legendary creature with first strike and death touch. When it deals combat damage to a player, choose 1, you draw a card and lose a life, destroy target enchantment, or remove up to 3 counters from target permanent. This card is a bomb without a doubt, and I think if you have this card, you're going to want to play it, splash it, however you can, get it out on the battlefield, because this is going to take over the board. Next we have our 4-drops at Cephalopod Sentry. Pay 2, a plains and an island. You get star 5 artifact creature flying, and then its power is equal to the number of artifacts you control. So it starts off as a 1/5, so it's a good blocker in the air. And you just hope that you have good synergy with the rest of your board and your deck, and this card could get pretty strong, especially in a deck that pumps out a bunch of those mites. This card could be amazing. You hope that you can get those sort of synergies. This is just another example of one of those cards that has a high ceiling but a really low floor. Next is Serum Court Chimera. Pay 2, an island and a mountain, 2/4 creature with flying. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, put an oil counter on it, and then you can remove 3 oil counters, draw a card, then you have the option of discarding a non-land card, and when you do, you get to deal 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker. Activate only as a sorcery. So this card has really strong text. I think for a 2/4 flyer, it's not bad for the value, but the fact that you have to remove 3 oil counters from it and it doesn't come into play with any on it, it's going to be very slow, and I hope that it's not too slow, but this card has a lot of potential to it. Next is Kethic Crucible Goliath. Pay 2, a swamp and a mountain for a 4/4 legendary creature. At the beginning of your end step, you may sacrifice another creature. If you do, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a non-legendary creature card with lesser mana value, put it on the battlefield, then put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So this card's pretty solid. I just sometimes need to see how these sacrifice decks work because they need the right pieces for them to be highly functioning. Otherwise, they're a little bit too slow and you run out of value too quickly. So I'm always skeptical on these cards, but they have a high ceiling. After that is Azuri Stalker of Spheres. Pay 2, a forest and an island for a 3/3 legendary creature. When it ETBs, you may pay an additional 3. If you do, proliferate twice. Whenever you proliferate, you draw a card. So essentially, you're looking at a 4/4 for 3 that allows you to draw a card whenever you proliferate, or you're paying 7 and you get a 3/3 still, but you get to draw 2 cards right off the bat and proliferate twice. So there is a lot to work with this card. I think that it's expensive, but it's a very strong ability. It's just, is that ability going to be strong enough to wait for that 7 mana, or is it even going to be worth throwing out at 4? So we'll see. It's easily removable, unfortunately, but we'll just have to see how the proliferate deck works out too. Nahiri the Unforgiving. A pay 1, a mountain, a Phyrexian mana that could be red or white, and a plains. So it's a 5 loyalty legendary planeswalker, and it can come in for 3 if you pay life. Then it's got +1 until end of turn, up to target creature attacks player each combat if able. Then you have +1, discard a card, then draw a card, and then the 0 is exile target creature or equipment card with mana value less than Nahiri's loyalty from your graveyard. Create a token that's a copy of it. That token gains haste, exile at the beginning of the next end step. Honestly, I think this is pretty solid in the equipment deck. You gotta think, like, this text doesn't seem too fantastic, but when you pair it with For Mirrodin, you not only get that token equipment, but you also get the 2/2 along with it. So I think the fact that there are some very strong equipment out there in the first place, there's a lot of potential with this card. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit underwhelming at first, but this card has potential. Next is Rhea Ivor, Bane of Bladehold. Pay 2 and a plains and a swamp, 3/4 legendary creature with Battle Cry. Whenever this creature attacks, each other attacking creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn. Then at the beginning of combat on your turn, the next time target creature would deal combat damage to one or more players this combat, prevent that damage, and if damage is prevented that way, create that many 1/1 Phyrexian Mites. And those have Toxic 1 and can't block. So this is going to be a crazy card to throw out there. You know, you might be able to threaten putting damage on them. If you don't put damage on them, your board goes super wide really quickly. The Battle Cry with those Mites makes them all 2/1s. So this card is a bomb, and I think that this is going to potentially go off in some decks, and I'm really excited to play these white-black decks. Next is Kato, Dancing Shadow. Pay 2, an island and a swamp, 3 loyalty planeswalker. Whenever one or more creatures you control deals combat damage to a player, you may return one of them to its owner's hand. If you do, you may activate loyalty abilities of Kato twice this turn rather than only once. +1 is up to 1 target creature can attack or block until your next turn. And then +0 is draw a card, and then -2, create a 2/2 colorless drone artifact creature token with Death Touch. When this creature leaves the battlefield, each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. I like the fact that this is a cheap ability. I like the fact that you have the option of drawing an extra card when you bounce a creature back to your hand. It works really well with the drones too, because it allows you to draw a card, the opponent loses 2 life, you gain 2 life. And Kato just looks like a nice spin based on the last Kato that we saw over in Kamigawa. So I really enjoy this card and I'm excited to play it. Next is going to be another bomb in the Toxic decks, Necrogen Rot Priest. A pay 2 swamp and a forest for a 1/5 creature with Toxic 2. When a creature you control with Toxic deals combat damage to that player gets an additional poison counter. And then you can pay 1, a swamp, and a forest. Target creature you control with Toxic gains Death Touch until end of turn. The fact that you can threaten that at instant speed is fantastic. You're going to be putting Toxic counters at a crazy rate, and you can even make this have Death Touch. So you've got a 1/5 that's going to put 3 Toxic when it attacks. Is just a very, very solid card. And then with the butt that it has, it doesn't allow your opponent to attack through you because of the Death Touch that you're threatening. So This card is going to be a staple in these black-green decks. And then after that is Luca, Bound to Ruin. Pay 2 a mountain, a Phyrexia mana that could either be forest or mountain, and then another forest. And you've got 5 loyalty legendary planeswalker, so it can come in with the 5, or if you pay the life, it's going to come in with 3. Then it has +1, add a mountain and a forest. Spend that mana only to cast creature spells or activate abilities of creatures. -1, create a 3/3 green Phyrexian Beast creature token with Toxic 1. And then -4, it deals X damage divided as you choose among any number of target creatures and or planeswalkers, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control as you activated this ability. And that's an important text right at the end there, as you activated this ability, because somebody can't go and bounce a creature and make it so that you've used that -4 and now it's worthless. So I think the fact that this card ramps you, it puts out bodies, and it removes creatures, it's everything that you want in a planeswalker, and the art on this card is fantastic too. On to our 5+ drops, we have our worst for limited, keep that in mind, for Phyrexia, Grand Unifier. Pay 3, a forest, a plains, an island, and a swamp. It comes out to 7 mana. A 7/7 legendary creature, flying, vigilance, death touch, lifelink. Enters the battlefield, reveal the top 10 cards of your library. For each card type, you may put a card of that type from among the revealed cards into your hand, put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So it's extremely hard to cast. You're never going to play this. It's going to be an F if you were looking at other people's rankings for limited. It is a crazy card if you can get it on the battlefield, but I highly doubt anybody will. And then you can reveal these top 10 cards, and you might not even be able to get the full value out of it depending on what you reveal. So I think this card has an extremely high upside, but the floor is so low in limited that this card isn't going to be worth it. Next you have Cinderslash Ravager, a 4-mana mountain in a forest with 5/5 creature that when you control permanents with oil counters, it costs 1 less for each one. And then it's got vigilance, and enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to each creature your opponent controls. This is a great card to counter all those Toxic Might decks. This is a great card to deal with a lot of those creatures in green that are 3/1s. There's the fact that this has vigilance and it can cost cheaper. It could even cost up to, it could be a 2-mana 5/5 with vigilance. I think that as its ceiling is phenomenal on its own. And it's just going to be a very solid card. I'd say not as good as the other Gruul card in the set, but I think this is a close second. After is Kaya, Intangible Slayer, 3 mana, 2 plains, and 2 swamps, 6 loyalty legendary planeswalker with hexproof, +2, each opponent loses 3 life and you gain 3 life. 0, you draw 2 cards, then each opponent may scry 1. Then -3, exile target creature or an enchantment. If it wasn't an aura, create a token that's a copy of it, except it's a 1/1 white spirit creature with flying in addition to its other types. So this is again a bomb that's hard to cast, but it's easier to cast than Phyrexia. I think this card could go off. If it gets countered, it's going to really suck, but once it's on the battlefield, it's going to be very hard for your opponents to deal with. Let's just hope that you have some blockers up to protect it for a bit. Next is Ovika Enigma Goliath, 5 mana, island and a mountain, 6/6 legendary creature with flying, ward 3, and pay 3 life. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, create X 1/1 Phyrexian Goblin creature tokens, where X is the mana value of that spell. They gain haste until end of turn. This is insane. This is a crazy card. It's not that hard to cast, apart from the fact that it costs 7. And it's going to be really hard for them to remove it. Especially late game, you don't know how much health they have. And if you can play a non-creature spell the next turn, this card is going to win you the game, probably. So I really enjoy this card. It's got a very high ceiling and it's not too hard to get out there. The only reason that makes Vivisection Evangelist a little better is the removal that comes with it. It's a pay 3, plains and a swamp, 4/4 creature with vigilance, and then if Corrupted is enabled, so your opponent has 3 or more poison counters on them, you get to destroy target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls. That's great bang for your buck, and I really enjoy this card. It's simple, it does what you want, it's not too expensive, and it can just clear out the strongest thing on the board, and you've got a great blocker and attacker up, so I think this card is fantastic. And that's going to be it, because there's no interaction or removal in the multicolored cards. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys didn't agree with some of my rankings, no problem, comment down below, because I'm interested to see what you guys have to say. And check me out on Twitch. Feel free to check out my other videos for the other colors, and I'll be posting the artifacts next. Take care and ciao.